Family, welcome to another episode of Financial Freedom. I am your host and accompaniment on this journey. Trust me, we're learning together. My name is Derek Brown. Oh man, we got some stuff coming for you about loans and mortgages. We got a great expert with us, and it's going to be awesome. But first, I got to say thank you. At the Hope TV, you all have made us a great success in our humble beginnings. We started March 19th, 2020 with just one show. And because of your 10 million views, which have gone up to over 45 million across the world, we've gone from one show to 35 shows. And without you, we couldn't have done it. So let me say thank you. And thank you for joining us one more time. Anyway, let's dig in. Man, this gentleman, Demetrius Lockett, he comes in as the previous chief of staff for the state rep, Alicia Thomas Morgan, currently partners with schools to help people understand the financial tools in purchasing a home and getting a home loan, as well as different financial tools for everyday life living. He chairs the Committee for Community Involvement for the Cobb Association of Realtors. He also has a special project coming on, which I want him to talk about, called the Rena Carter Foundation, which is a 501c3. Ladies and gentlemen, Demetrius Lockett.
Hey Derek, how are you?
Hey, sir, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Good to see you again.
Good to be seen, sir. Good to be seen. Look, I want to take a moment. You have something that's close to your heart named the Rena Carter Foundation. Would you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking about it. Actually, the Rena Carter Foundation is a foundation that was founded by me a couple years ago and it's named after my maternal grandmother. And its intention is to teach life and financial skills to high school students. So often, in my job of doing loans, I get to see people from all walks of life, all different financial levels. But the thing that noticed, regardless if they're a janitor or a president, there was no
Right,
place where they really learned financial life skills. Because we didn't learn it in
right,
high school, and then when I went to Morehouse, I didn't learn it there. And of course, then you go into the workforce and everybody just assumes that you know it. So I want to
right.
kind of get in the middle of that and start disrupting that a little bit, disrupting financial
Right.
poverty, especially generational wise.
Yo, I love that. I love that. So, are there specific grades that you focus on in this foundation, or is it just across the board, where whoever you can work with?
We focus primarily on 11th and 12th grade, sending them to
Okay.
college, but we have a program that starts right at the ninth grade level so that we
Hmm.
feed into the 11th and 12th grade. And of course, we partner with different schools so that we go in and teach the classes. And Alicia has even put some different prototypes online to teach some of the students. So
Oh,
yeah,
wow. Okay.
focus primarily on high
Cool.
school students.
Love that. Love that. How do people get a hold of you or that foundation if they want to get some more information about that?
Go to the RenaCarterFoundation.org. We're
Mhm.
also on Instagram and Facebook under Rena Carter as well.
Got you. Well, sir, thank you for that. That's good stuff. That's good stuff. Speaking of which, you've been doing this for a while, actually. It says you're a 25-year veteran in the mortgage profession. So that was 1995 when you got started. Is that correct?
Uh, yeah, I guess math is my strong suit. That would be 1995.
Right,
Right
right.
now, I work
So,
for
so
partner with.
Brad Pitt was the sexiest man alive. Uh, at the time, he was on the magazines. Coolio was still singing "Gangsta's Paradise," and cell phones were only used for calling. Who knew that was their primary function? Uh, so how did you get how did you get introduced to this in the late '90s or mid '90s?
It's really funny, Derek, that you asked because I was originally in this group called Toastmasters, which is kind of a
Okay.
public speaking and listening organization.
Right.
Um, I happened to be their president, and part of my
Okay.
cabinet, one of the vice presidents, his wife owned a mortgage company. And
Okay.
so for a while, he was trying to recruit me, but I was working for Caterpillar Financial, so I was good. But then my
Okay.
sister needed some money for college, and my parents had run out of money, so I did a refinance for a doctor. Made some real good money, and I just fell in love with the business. I fell in love with the ability to change people's financial position, but more importantly,
Right.
to see them have a dream and walk with them to watch them achieve it. So I was hooked. I was hooked, and it
You know,
pays good.
that's dope. And it
And
pays good. That's wonderful.
it pays good.
It's interesting because when I remember the '90s, you didn't hear a lot of people walking around talking about, oh man, I want to be a mortgage officer or a loan officer or whatever. Those are professions you don't hear a lot in Black and brown communities. So I was wondering how you came across that. So thank you for answering that. Um,
Absolutely.
this particular focus of this show was mainly about loans, various types, and you've been in the industry long enough to be able to give us a lot of good information. So again, thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
If we're looking for a loan, what should our mindset be when we go looking for one?
You know, that's a really good question. People often tend to try and think they have a specific loan they get to. I will tell you that most first-time home buyers use a
Hmm.
product called FHA. You've heard of HUD homes? That's the same thing.
Yes.
It's an FHA mortgage that went back, so now it's a HUD property. But FHA tends
Hold
to
on,
be the
hold
most
on, hold on,
lenient.
hold on,
Okay.
pause. I'm going to
Yeah,
stop periodically because I need you to break down
good.
some of those terms. Tell me what does it mean to be a HUD home?
Okay. HUD is a acronym for the Housing and Urban Development. So
Okay.
when someone buys a house and they do an FHA mortgage, which is the Fair Housing Authority, when they do an FHA
Hmm.
mortgage, it's backed by the Housing and Urban Development. So if you were
Gotcha.
to have a property that was foreclosed on, it then goes back to HUD because HUD has backed the mortgage, and those are HUD homes. But
Gotcha.
FHA
Okay.
writes the guidelines for how we can lend to first-time home buyers. And they tend to be the most
Okay.
lenient in terms of credit, in terms of down payment, and in terms of ratios. So most of the time, you want to
Hmm.
see kind of where you are. I always tell people first start with your credit report. That's the first thing.
Okay.
That's going to more so determine which programs are going to be available to you.
That keeps coming up over and over again, and I'm so happy we focused on credit in our first season of the show. Our credit report and our ability to have good credit and build
Right.
it and pull those things up seems to be a reoccurring theme over and over again. How important is it to have good credit when getting a home? Do you have to have perfect credit to get a home?
Well, you don't. You absolutely don't, but you should want to. It's like
Okay.
anything else. There's almost sometimes two worlds of lending and two worlds of money. If you
Hmm.
have good credit, and good credit is determined somewhere 640 or better in terms of a
Okay.
credit score,
Okay.
then you are available to a lot of things that otherwise you would not be in terms of monies that the government will sometimes give you in terms of to help you to buy a house. And also the biggest thing I think is when you buy a house, that's the beginning, right? So
Okay.
after you get the house, you have to get furniture, you have to get utilities, and all those
Right.
things are dependent on credit, just like we're looking at credit. So yeah, credit is really,
Mhm.
really important, really important.
Let me ask this. I've heard before that when they pull up your credit report, when they look at it, it's basically a a document that displays your relationship with money. Is that how a loan officer looks at it too?
Yes, kind of. We have
Break it
very
down.
specific guidelines that we have to go by in terms of if you qualify or if you don't. So
Okay.
we're not doing as much of an analysis as maybe a financial planner would do, but we're more
Hmm.
so looking to see, according to the guidelines, for example, if a guideline says that you can't have any lates in the last 24 months, that's all we're looking
Okay.
for. But the credit
Mm.
score is supposed to determine and supposed to give some kind of feedback on your creditability and how likely you are to pay back things based on how you've done it before. I don't find that that's always the
Hmm.
truth, but that's the intention.
Right. So your credit score is basically your first impression, whether it's true or not. That's what you get.
Exactly. Exactly. And a lot of times, especially in you talked about the brown and black communities, it's a matter of education.
Okay.
In some of the other areas or some of the other nationalities, they'll sit at the kitchen table and they discuss money.
Okay.
We don't typically discuss money except possibly sometimes who are not paying or who are not answering the phone for.
Right
No,
there, right
seriously.
there.
Our
I'll call
children
Big
have
next month and tell
utility
him I'm
bills.
driving.
Right. So I think it's just a matter of education. And that's why it's so important what you're doing. I mean, what you guys
Gotcha.
are doing is incredible because it gives a space. And I would even say that that probably has a lot to do with your viewership growing so quickly because there's just not a space to provide this information in an unthreatening way. That's the same thing for home ownership. A lot of people just don't
Right.
apply for a house because they don't want to be rejected, not one more time. So we've got to
Right.
change
Right.
the expectation.
Let me ask this, because I've been hearing different conversations when it comes to housing and debt and loans and credit, and I want to get back to that idea of rejection at some point too. There's a conversation right now about a movement about the crushing weight of debt in different
Mm,
facets of our life. We've been come across
mm.
different ideas about uh, getting a manual underwriter if you're trying to get a house and to avoid having debt at all costs. What are your how do we look at home loans when it comes to debt? Do we look at that like a regular idea of this is just another debt for me to be burdened by, revolving debt, installment debt? How do we look at a home loan or any kind of loan when it comes to debt?
Well, keep in mind when it comes to at least qualifying for a home, in terms of that debt, what we're going to look at is we're going to look at the things that you pay on a normal revolving and installment basis. And
Hmm.
based on what the formula is in order to qualify for a home, the less debt you have, the more house you can qualify for. That's why
Ah,
two people
okay.
can have the same exact job and one can qualify for 200,000 and the other one was for 150,000. That's because their car
Mm,
payment might be higher. They might have student loans. So I always tell people it's really important to keep your debt low. And also one thing that a lot of people don't know about is we don't look at how much outstanding debt that you have. We look at your
oh,
monthly
oh,
payment. So you could owe
okay.
American Express $10,000, which people would think I got to get that down before I get approved. We're looking at what the monthly payment is because that's what's
Okay.
important in terms of your cash flow. Yeah, but you want to keep debt low.
Gotcha.
I think you want to keep debt low at all times, really, because
Hmm.
anything COVID-19 could happen, and it's nice to have that flexibility.
Definitely. So when it comes to getting a house, we don't need pristine credit. We don't need to have zero debt. We need to have, from the sounds of it, manageable debt. We need debt within reason.
Take what your gross income is
Okay.
and multiply it by 50%. So let's say,
Okay.
for example, you made $1,000 a month.
Hmm.
No, let's use your salary. Let's say, for example, you make $10,000 a month, right?
Yes. Come on. Use my
Okay.
salary. Yes. Come on.
So,
I'll take
so
it. Go ahead.
50% of that, 50% of that would be $5,000.
Okay.
So $5,000 is the most that you will get approved for, and within different programs of
Okay.
how much you will get approved for all of your total debt, including the house payment you want. So that's $5,000, which sounds great, unless you have a $4,000 car payment and a $400 student loan payment, and those
Goodness
kind of
gracious.
things that start taking away from the debt. But if you have no debt, that's a great big house that you can buy. You don't have to spend that much money, but it's nice to be able to have that flexibility. But the important thing is to know, let's say, for example, it was $1,000 person. They make
Mm,
$1,000. They want to buy a house. If they have no debt, they qualify for 50% of 1,000, which is $500, right? So they will qualify for a $500 house payment, whatever that total to be. But let's say,
okay.
for example, they had a $250 car payment,
Okay.
right? So
Hmm.
that's debt that's already there.
Hmm.
So they make $1,000. They can spend up to 50% of what they make on housing and all of their other debt, which is $500, and
Hmm.
they have $250 already in the car payment. So
Okay.
now this person can only buy and afford a $250 house payment
Okay.
versus the other person that didn't have any debt to qualify for a $500 payment. So you
Oh,
see, they have
okay.
the same job, they
Right.
both make $1,000, but this one either waited either until their car was paid off or they didn't have a car payment, so that all of their discretionary money or their 50% and
Mm-hmm.
go towards the house, and then you get a car.
Cause I was just trying to figure out how on IGTV people be having jobs like pencil sharpener and grass cutter every 3 weeks.
You know, that goes back to what you were talking about credit. Even though this is
Yeah,
not a specific program that I encourage, there are
right.
programs out there. If you have great credit, I just had a gentleman, um, a business owner, makes really great money, has great credit, but we weren't able to provide the income. But because he had great credit and he had some money to put down, they didn't ask any other questions, and he now has a loan for $400,000. But that just goes to talk to or speak to the power of good credit,
What is
because he
what
had a
is good credit,
684, and so they said, okay, he'll pay us back. Of course, the interest rate is higher because
Mm-hmm.
rate is attached to risk, but
Mm-hmm.
you have more options as your credit is better.
Gotcha.
If
So
his
you
credit
told us
score would have
fair.
been lower, he wouldn't have the house at all.
Yeah, I hear that. So you said fair or average credit was 640? Is that what you said
Yes,
earlier?
yes,
So what's good
yes.
credit in your view?
Good credit is a score over 7.
Over 7.
Yes, which is not
Got you.
that difficult to get. It really is not.
Okay. Okay. I hear that. So let me ask this. There seems to be a very clear position. You have a rubric, you said, that if they meet this criteria, then we can see what we can do about getting them a loan. Um, do you ever find that there seems to be, and what I commonly hear in Black and brown communities is this idea that we have a cultural idea of we can't get loans.
Hmm.
We're not approved for loans. We don't, for whatever reason. Do you find a discrepancy when people come to you, um, of people who are unable to get it elsewhere, but somehow you find these people are fine? Or what has your experience been when it comes to loans in that regard?
I think that part of the reason that I'm in this business is because I'm really great at it, but I also think that it's a ministry that I have to do.
Okay.
There are all a loan officer is a person like me, and an
Hmm.
underwriter. These are people that are taking what they believe and know into government and guidelines in terms of lending. So
Right.
I'll give you a really good example. Um, I often have single parents. Let's say a
Okay.
single mother who
Okay.
has 2 children, and
Okay.
the underwriter would automatically ask one underwriter would automatically ask, we need a copy of the child support papers.
Okay.
What child support papers? She believes there has to be child support because the woman's not married. But that's just a matter of interpretation or experience. I have another
Okay.
underwriter that used to reject a loan or try to because someone had a bounce check before. That's because
Wow.
she's never had a bounce check ever. She doesn't even know what you would do with a bounce check. She just knows that's in her mind bad credit. So it becomes levels because these are people that are behind the thing. That's why the guidelines are there. But you but you have to have a loan officer, somebody there fighting for you, fighting for your
Got
case, and understanding that you're a person, and having your back and understanding the guidelines. Because again, an underwriter, loan officer can think what they want, but it's all backed behind guidelines. So
mm,
yeah, I see that a lot though. I see that probably
mm,
more than I would like to. But I'll be
right.
honest too, a lot of times what's is in the way of folks is themselves. Because a lot
Let's
of times people will believe exactly what you said. I can't get a loan. There's no money for me. They always reject me. It's redlining. It's this. And some of that is, yes, it's true. But you know what?
mm.
There's a whole bunch of people that look like you and me living in big old fat old houses. So why not you? And so I
So
think
let me
people have
ask
to
a
get
question
past.
on that. Let me ask a question on that because I think that's a good point. What do you think are 3 misconceptions about getting a loan that may contribute to this cultural memory of us Black and brown people not being able to get one? Because sometimes it may be racism, like you said, but it may not be. What are
Mhm.
misconceptions about the idea of, oh, this was a racist thing, and it may not be that.
Right. I think a lot of the misconceptions are built on conceptions that were true.
Ah,
But I think more importantly, we have to not worry or care. We have to work
okay.
on our own mindset because it does not matter why they're there or if they're there, unless you're going to march and fight against them. You have a house to get, period, point blank. If even one person was able to get a house, then you can. You just have to fight it. And again, there's guidelines. So you match yourself with somebody that's going to teach you what to do. It's just like when you went to Morehouse. I mean, your teacher might not like you, but these are the 20 classes that you have to take to graduate. Regardless if you like me
Gotcha.
or not, I fulfilled all 20 classes. It's the same thing on getting a mortgage. I have
Mm-hmm.
my credit score. I haven't been late. I've documented my money. I'm working. Give me the loan. So
There,
redlining doesn't have the
there,
power it used to have.
got you. There is a different people I follow on IG. One of them often says, I think his name is Derek Grace II. It says you have to learn how to play the game so you can eat with the wolves. So if I'm
Absolutely.
hearing you correctly, it's if the wolves are eating, you need to learn how to eat with the wolves. So if this other black person got this house, there's a way they got that house. We have to figure out how they got it, and then make sure that we follow that blueprint.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And often the underwriters, I mean, if you have all your ducks in a row, the underwriter's not looking to say, are you black or red? They're looking to see is your credit score where it needs to be? Can you document your job? Can you document the money that needs to be paid? Are your ratios in line? If so, well, we've got to give you the keys. And sometimes, a lot of times in our communities, because we don't bank like they want us to necessarily bank in terms of how we deposit money and get money out and loan money to Susu and those kind of things, it sometimes is a little bit more work. But I think
Gotcha.
one of the things that people believe is here's one misconception. People believe that most people that are in houses decided, they woke up and said, I want to buy a house, and they called a realtor, and then they moved in. And that is absolutely not at all close to the truth. First of all, to get a loan, you go through what's called processing, and they call it processing because there's a process where we have to
Okay.
document all the stuff that you say your credit's good, your employment's good, all of that stuff that you're building. You didn't get your diploma just because you showed up in 4 years, but you had to do some work. It's the same exact thing in buying a house, but there is absolutely a blueprint. It's not anybody can buy a house in 0 to 12 months, starting from scratch, if they really wanted to.
Mm, got you. Got you. Okay. Anybody can buy a house in 12 months, starting from scratch if they
Starting
wanted
from
to.
scratch, if they had a plan. Yes.
Wow. Wow. If all things are considered, we go in there with what we want. How do we know our loan officer is on the up and up? Like, because you said, like before, certain things are wrong. Like, you have
Right.
predatory lending, you have redlining, you have people. We had a different, various guests on here before who often said when they worked for certain organizations before they were able to get their own, they had to deal with the idea that the banks, the financial institution, were basically looking for them to do what's best for the institution, not necessarily with the person.
Mhm.
How do we know how do we walk in strategically and know if we're being taken advantage of, or if our interest rate is too high, or something is off about what we got going on?
You know, this is an industry that one of the few industries that it's so easy to be taken advantage of and you not even know it, all the way to the conclusion of the process.
Got you.
Of course, you want to look at people's reputation in terms of the company they work for.
Okay.
I would say just like if you were convicted of a felony and you were facing jail time, or if you
Okay.
were getting ready to have a baby, you don't just kind of, some people do, but I wouldn't just go through the phone book and pick, my lawyer or my gynecologist or somebody that's going to make a life decision. This is a big decision, a
Right.
huge decision.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
the trust that you're putting in, not just the institution that you're getting the loan from, but really the loan officer, because
Right.
a loan officer can make or break your deal in a minute and you don't even know what happened. So I
Right.
think it's important that you look at, of course, you have to select a real estate agent. So ask a real estate agent for referrals, but also check out whoever you're going to use. Social media is great these days because it allows, it's not every